Hello, welcome to a new format. We are going to eventually collect some questions that are sent to us and pre-selected, of course, so that we can talk to the listeners. That is, give answers to the questions that are asked to us. In our first edition, I selected 7 questions so we can have a little chat. I will continue collecting these questions, selecting the ones that I think are most interesting for us to engage in a debate, and to be chatting with you, which we'll probably do at some point. You are always invited. Well, the first question today is, what is the difference between karma and destiny? Well, destiny is a word closely associated with Western culture, especially from the Christian Middle Ages, which implies something somewhat fixed, as if it were written in stone. As if man were not endowed with free will, and his life was already entirely predetermined. And karma is an Indian concept. The laws of dharma and karma belong to the nomenclature and to the concepts of the Hindu vision. Karma is about cause and effect. In other words, it even reminds us of a biblical proverb that says, "The sowing is free, but the harvest, it is mandatory." So, obviously, if you plant beans, you will have to harvest beans. You can't expect soybeans or any other type of crop. The consequences will be consistent with the causes. And as the philosopher Blavatsky said, all beings are free in the field of causes, but conditioned in the field of consequences. In other words, karma has a field of freedom and a field of determination. Destiny, on the other hand, considers that everything is already pre-written, that there is no field of freedom. And man would be like a puppet, performing a certain pre-written drama in the hands of an unknown puppeteer, making him play some sort of role. This is particularly debatable within philosophy because it removes the responsibility for one's actions from the individual and transfers everything to a grand cause that we don't quite understand why it does what it does. In other words, by taking free will from man, it becomes very difficult to see how he would evolve under these conditions. This week, we were speaking about Boethius' Consolation of Philosophy. Interestingly, we found out he elaborates extensively on the subject. In other words, the law of karma is cause and effect. You have freedom in the field of causes, but it is determined in the field of consequences. And destiny is often associated with something rigid that is entirely written, and therefore nullifies the idea of free will and consequently the idea of evolution. It's a more debatable concept. What else do we have here? Here, a complex question, but so timely I didn't want to shy away from it, even though it's difficult for us. How to deal with the loss of a loved one. Perhaps this is the hardest test of all in life. I couldn't say if it's harder to lose a loved one or to know about the impending loss of your own life. I can't say which of the two situations would be the hardest, but the truth is that the adversities of life, from the most mild and everyday to the hardest of all, I believe there is only one remedy that, as it is applied, builds resistance to greater sufferings, which is trust in the laws of life. Imagine that child who has just been born, just emerged from the mother's womb. The nurses actually recommend wrapping the baby up in a way that comfortably snugly to simulate the security she had in the womb. Where she felt enveloped by something, she didn't feel adrift. This same insecurity that the baby feels at birth, we experience throughout life when we believe in chaos. We feel adrift. And here I'm not talking about a belief system where you must believe in the laws of life. No. It's not about a belief system. It's about a careful and daily observation of everyday phenomena, starting from the smallest things. The plants in your garden, the small animals, the insects, in short, observing the cycle of life, seeing how things have a very perfect connection and all of them follow a purpose. This constant observation, which then leads to reflection and absorption of a connection of an entire interconnected system where everything is imbued with meaning, makes us feel a bit more secure in the face of life's adversities. Well, there is a purpose to this. Although it is painful, it is imbued with meaning. It's not a coincidence, nor is it, let's say, an injustice that provokes outrage, even though it is an event that causes a lot of pain. Plato said that in his ideal republic, laws should have a detailed preamble, because when a person doesn't understand the purpose of things, they tend to rebel, which is very difficult to reverse. If we understand the purpose of things, we realize that, for some reason, that human being ends their journey there. And we don't know how much time we have left to finish ours, but it's never that much time. Life is quite brief, and somewhere, at some point in this unknown universe, perhaps we will intertwine again. Each time we start to observe life more closely, we begin to notice within ourselves an axis, an unchanging, permanent center. The perception of what passes, by contrast, tends to make us notice what does not pass, what remains. When we find, on this transient surface, an axis that remains, we also become more assured that there is something that endures in everything and everyone. And this something tends to unite at a certain moment, because all things that exist tend toward the same essence, toward the same being, toward unity. Ultimately, this observation and reflection on this concatenation, this neural network that is life, where everything is interconnected and everything is imbued with meaning, certainly makes us more confident in the face of small, medium, and large adversities. The greatest of all pains, which is the loss of those we love, can indeed be softened if you trust in life and realize that there are no true losses. Life is a constant transformation. When you realize there is an essence within you that has never been lost. And that human being in front of you certainly also has an essence that cannot be lost. It is beyond time, beyond what is changeable. In other words, these small daily perceptions, nourished by a powerful and constant reflection on them, it allows us to absorb the fundamentals of life, the protocols of life, and ensures that we no longer feel adrift or lost, like someone who has just left the womb where everything was secure. And suddenly, you're in a void where nothing supports you. The idea of chaos versus the idea of cosmos. Within the cosmos, when we understand it, when we observe it and not just blindly believe in it, the cosmos is like a womb that shelters us from many instabilities, often unnecessary, arising more from our superficiality towards life than from the actual challenges life presents us. Try it. It's something that works. Set as a goal to trust life more and more, not with blind faith, but a trust based on observation and reflection. How can we go beyond the mind and connect with the divine? This is also something quite interesting. How can we go beyond the mind? In our current moment, as human beings, I have no idea how to go beyond the mind. But what I do believe is that we have a lot to understand about what the mind is. It is not as rigid a mechanism as we think. The mind is an apparatus that is like a mirror. This, as the Eastern traditions say, is not my invention. A mirror that can be turned downward, towards the trivialities of life, to attend to them, to facilitate them, to give way to our bodily desires, our emotions, to find a solution, a continuity to our fleeting, mundane, and non-transcendent pursuits. It can be turned upward, and this mirror turned upward reflects our need for a core of values that endures. It reflects our need to find a greater meaning for all the things that are. It reflects our thirst for essence behind the half-existence. The more we get used to turning this mirror upward, the more we begin to decode in a language that the mind understands things that are beyond it. And we begin to ground our lives with universal ideas, with universal values. Imagine that you have a box with those children's toys with little letters, or that small architect set with tiny house bricks. You have to organize it. But what pattern will you use to organize these little letters or these bricks? It depends on the model you have in mind, on what you want to build. If you have a model, which is a universal model of values, virtues, and wisdom, you will organize these little letters. The little letters from your toy box Organize these units of your mind, which are thoughts, according to universal patterns. And then this will reflect those patterns. Your mind becomes a mirror. It organizes its tools, its units, according to these universal models. Now, if you turn it downward, it will always reflect transient, mundane, and non-transcendent things that do not allow you to perceive anything other than an increasingly facilitated survival. In other words, beyond the least effort, the greatest pleasure at the lowest cost, a life increasingly selfish and focused on one's own interests, fleeting, personal, without many roots. So, learn to turn your mind upward. Remember a phrase that is well known but little understood. It says that truly human beings talk about ideas, common people talk about things, and trivial people talk about other people. They remain in the superficiality of superficiality, which is gossip and invasion of others' privacy. The men who turn their mirror upward, they love ideas and want to organize their thoughts, which are the little bricks in their box, according to the understanding of justice, the understanding of goodness, the understanding of beauty. And when they manage to do so, they become decoders of these universals for the human world. And they are capable of capturing and decoding beautiful ideas for the world. And this is one of the most powerful things a human being can do. You can do it, and that gives you the most freedom. Because once you know how to do this, nothing and no one can take it away from you. It's no wonder that philosophy has always been persecuted by tyrants, by those who seek to homogenize, by alienators throughout history. It signifies an achievement that nothing and no one can take away from you. What is the first book you would recommend to someone starting out in the study of philosophy? Particularly in the historical moment we are living in, I recommend Latin Stoicism, with names like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, without a shadow of a doubt. Stoicism is a school of philosophy for times of crisis. This already aligns a lot with the moment we are living in. It is simple in its expression. The idea is to convey the art of living so that everyone can understand it. It carries a great responsibility in life. In other words, it doesn't allow you to transfer all your responsibilities to others, to third parties, fourth parties, and so on. It speaks of commitment, of responsibility. And it speaks a lot about what we were just discussing, which is the understanding of the laws of life. Nothing happens to a man that is not inherent to man. Nothing happens to life that is not inherent to life. So, you put yourself in a position of wanting to understand where life wants to go with all of this, and thus align yourself with it. It's another way of saying what I mentioned earlier, to understand and trust in the order of the universe. Trust, understand, and have faith in the cosmos, not in chaos. Therefore, Stoicism is very instructive. In Epictetus, in Seneca, in Marcus Aurelius, you find very beautiful practical instructions for life. How do I discover my life's mission? There is a great tendency to complicate something that, in its principles, is quite simple. Nothing is as simple when it comes to execution, but in its principles, it is quite simple. I always use the example of the pyramid. We go through countless facets, like a pyramid with numerous faces. But the peak is just one, meaning the life mission of every human being is defined by nature, which is to be human. Try to imagine what a human being is, full in the fullness of values, virtues, and wisdom. The peak of the human pyramid, the fullness of humanity. That is your life's mission, nothing else. Now, how are you going to walk towards that? Of course, as you go through life observing, realizing that life is not chaos, but cosmos, therefore, considering the suggestions that life gives you. Because when we determine to walk in the direction of what nature expects from us, it helps us. As Jung would say, it provokes synchronicity. It brings us tools so that we can succeed on this path. Remember the fairy tale stories where the prince says, I will rescue that princess from the dragon. Along the way, magical helpers appear, bringing him the necessary weapons so that he arrives there well equipped enough to defeat that dragon. Therefore, life, which is not chaos but cosmos, when you commit to its great purpose, which is to make the human being whole, it will bring tools along the way. Don't focus on the means, focus on the ends. It's like a scientist who wants, for example, to reach the understanding of a certain law of nature. He focuses on the end goal, and the means, he observes all the possibilities that arise before him, trying to see which one is most favorable to achieve his goals. The means can be surprising. If you have this vision to perceive this, it can lead me to my goal, it adds to my objective, you will know how to discern. And many times, you will walk through paths that were unforeseen for you. You might start by doing something specific, and soon you'll be teaching how to do that thing. Before you know it, you're perfecting it with other related arts. You might find paths that take you there faster, that help illuminate the way for those who come after you. In the end, if you don't lose sight of your goal, which is to be human, to build yourself as a human being, the means will come. And these means might be unexpected. If you label, you will miss the opportunities that life offers. So, I want to reach the human ideal by painting pictures. Look, life might give you many other opportunities. Other paths will open up. If you fixate, you limit yourself. Therefore, don't lose sight of the purpose, the ideal, the meaning of human life. And be attentive to the opportunities that life unfolds. Trust. And there is synchronicity, which life aligns with those who work for it, walking alongside them. It's what was said in Latin mythology that fortune advanced through the windows of men who worked in favor of the laws of nature, cutting the threads of fate, or in other words, bad karma, as in India it would be said, of a destiny that could be prematurely spoken. Because the man who works for the purposes of nature, he is a servant of it. Therefore, nature is interested in this man's life. Work for the purposes of nature alongside humanity, which is to form true human beings. And be attentive to the means it offers you. Don't fixate on the tools, focus only on the masterpiece you intend to create. And let the tools emerge as they will. What else do we have here? What can we do to stop complaining? That's curious. We have this terrible, morbid focus. How about committing to help? Every time you see something incomplete, commit yourself to looking within, to find what doesn't exist in you, within your possibilities, a piece you can contribute to that puzzle and make it more complete. If I say, for example, no residence in Brasilia has flowers, I can say, no, here, I have them. Therefore, some residence in Brasilia does have flowers, because mine does. Do you understand this? When I have a value, it means that this value is present, it can be shared, it can be in that missing piece. So, every time you have a critical view, have a vision of commitment, of responsibility. In other words, replace the destructive view with a collaborative one. Selfishness for generosity. Just today. By coincidence, I don't know, I think I don't believe in coincidences. An institution that works with street animals, she was complaining about this on the internet. That people reach out to adopt animals, and sometimes they complain violently, even using foul language, because they find the doors closed or a phone that no one answers. And they don't understand that these people who take these animals off the street, take them to the vet, bathe them. They take money out of their own pockets to get them ready for adoption. They are volunteers who have their jobs, who have their personal commitments and can't always be there. They don't have 24 hours to be there. Instead of criticizing, why not volunteer to work with this organization? Because if they can only attend to it for 1 hour a day, now it will be an hour and a half, because you can offer half an hour of your time. In other words, instead of criticizing what's missing in others, see if in your own repertoire there's someone or something that fits. In the void of someone else's repertoire. In other words, replace the urge to criticize with the urge to collaborate, to give, to make things better than they were. Because I passed through there. Imagine this mindset projected throughout your entire life. The world will become a little better. Because you passed through it. The lives of the people you interacted with will be a little better because you spent time with them. Adopt this as a technique in your life, even in the most mundane situations. Sometimes you enter a public space that is usually clean and tidy, and a vandal has passed through, throwing papers everywhere. It wasn't me, and I have nothing to do with it. Who knows, you might start to find satisfaction in picking up a clean piece of paper, picking up the one that's on the ground. And put it in the trash can just for the satisfaction of seeing that the places you pass through are better than they were before. Try it. It's an excellent habit. Instead of just fighting against flaws, it would be very interesting to nurture the virtue on the other end, which is powerful enough to overcome that flaw. Because otherwise, simply pointing out flaws can become an innocuous morbidity. Think about that for a moment. Well, for today, these are 7 questions. On Saturdays, I will always be here. As long as there are questions, I'll be around. Send yours in. I'll be selecting those I find most interesting for a debate, and we'll always be sharing and discussing our doubts together. A big hug to everyone.